What's going on, everybody? Jolt here from the TokenMinorities, and I'm here with my draft analysis for NPL Season 6. Now, before I jump into that, just wanted to go over a little bit about how last year concluded, or last season concluded, as I never really made a conclusion video per se. As for those of you that did follow me last year, you would know that, or last season, I keep saying that, you would know that I did not make playoffs in NPL Season 5, and there's a variety of reasons for that. I mainly blame Tilt, but there was a fair amount of hacks involved in that as well. But regardless, we're putting that behind us, and we're going to focus this season on going back where we belong, and that is the playoffs. So that's most definitely the goal moving forward for this season. And with my draft this season, I do plan to patch certain holes that my draft last season had that were so easily exploitable. Yes, my team was very hacksable last season, and that was very, very bad for someone like me for sure. But even more so, the way it was drafted was such that I wasn't able to pull myself out of situations where I did get hacked, in that I didn't have a lot of safety valves per se, in the form of priority, in the form of secondary offensive Pokemon that can counter sweep my opponent, stuff like that. I had to really pull a lot of tricks out of the bag last season to have any success, and quite honestly, I do feel pretty fortunate to end up going 6-6 last season, despite the fact that I could have easily done better than that as well, if certain things had gone my way. But that's all beside the point. I just wanted to make sure this season that I am not falling into the same traps that I did last season with my draft, and in doing so, I'll be drafting around a principle of priority spam, momentum, and general solid cores, offensively speaking. So I'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but before I jump into the draft itself, I do want to talk a little bit about some of the changes compared to last season, and just some of the specific rules we have for this generation, because it is the new generation. Things do change quite a bit, so just talk a little bit about the bans and unbans. So Mega Kangaskhan actually got unbanned this season, which is definitely threatening to say the least, and my draft position being number 4 overall means I'm probably not going to get Mega Kangaskhan myself, so I need to have a good response to that for sure. And then there's also several very powerful Ultra Beasts that were released with this generation, as you all know, I'm sure. Those are all things to be very carefully preparing for in my preparation. That said, Pheromosa is banned, so I don't have to worry about that thing, thank goodness. But things like Tapu Lele, not an Ultra Beast, but still a very powerful Pokemon, that's allowed. All those other ones are allowed as well. The only other bans from the new generation are the cover legendaries, so Solgaleo, Lunala, and then Zygarde Complete, I believe, was the only other one we banned. Thinking over that, I think that's correct. We also banned Battle Bond Greninja. That's one thing as well that was pretty necessary, I think. Even though its coverage isn't quite that amazing yet, it's still really powerful and worth at least considering a ban. We did end up banning it. So as far as things that got banned from last season, we did ban Lando Eye as well as Mega Latias, as both of those proved to be menace, and we knew they were a menace. We just gave them a chance last season, and they got the ban hammer this season, so they are gone. But otherwise, everything else is allowed. Anything that you would expect to be banned in draft play is banned, with the exception of Mega Kangaskhan, so there's that. And from there, we can just go ahead and dive on into this. So my initial draft plan, I already gave the overall idea of what I was going for, but my initial draft plan was to actually draft around a double bunny core of Mega Lopunny and Diggersby. With that said, certain snipes happened, and I wasn't able to achieve that specific core, so with that said, I did still get the #1 pick that I wanted, and that was Mega Lopunny. So Mega Lopunny is the priority god, essentially, of this generation. With Talonflame being nerfed, Mega Lopunny is definitely the priority god, in my opinion, as the combination of Fake Out, Quick Attack, coming off of Stab, obviously, Stab boosted in both of those regards, plus perfect coverage between Return and High Jump Kick, or near perfect. I think it's perfect, technically. But even so, nothing wants to switch into that, and that's just overall a really nice wall breaker in certain matchups, and even better, just great at bailing me out in mid-game or late game if things start looking a little bit scary. So Mega Lopunny is something I'm really excited to use. I know it's seen a lot of success in leagues like the PPL, especially, used by, I believe, Shoddy and Monotui, maybe some others there as well have found some success, but I just know Mega Lopunny is a low-risk Mega that's going to do a lot of work for me this season, so definitely happy to give it a shot here, and we'll see how that goes. But next up for round 2, I picked up Latias. Now, Latias is one of the Pokemon that I made Z eligible. So how Z moves work in the NPL is that we banned support Z moves. So things like Z Splash, gone. Things like Z Rain Dance, gone. None of that's allowed. But we do allow offensive Z moves because they are type-based. They're not going to give extraordinary additional benefits in most cases. I think Mew has one that sets up a Psychic Terrain, but most of the other physical, or not physical, but offensive Z moves don't have those extra effects, which is pretty nice. But every team is allowed to have 3 Pokemon that can use any offensive Z move. So Latias was one of those Pokemon for me because it does have such incredible coverage options, and some of those options are somewhat lower in base power, and Z moves definitely compensate for that pretty well. It's also nice having Latias as a Z-Mon, because if I'm holding a Z-Stone, I cannot be knocked off, meaning that knockoff's power is weakened, which is really nice with Latias being a Psychic type, so that's definitely an added benefit there. Also a nice defogger, but I don't want it to defog either, so I'll definitely be trying to draft other means of hazard removal throughout this draft to make sure Latias is freed up to be the menace that it really can be. So right off the bat, I have 2 Pokemon with solid speed tiers, very quick. Mega Lopunny can't really be bulky, but it doesn't need to, but Latias can be bulky, so I'm already starting the makings of a bulky offensive draft, and that's always what I try to go for. That's the best style in the format, and I don't think that can even be debated. So Latias definitely is very solid to achieving that. Now next up, I wanted Tapu Fini really badly in round 3. I really did. But it got taken in round 1, so I was not able to get Tapu Fini, but the Water Fairy typing is just way too good for this core that I'm working on to pass up. So Azumarill was around, I took Azumarill, and Azumarill essentially is assuming the role that Diggersby would have taken with the initial draft plan, as it's an additional wall breaker for Mega Lopunny. So the combination of Azumarill and Mega Lopunny is really good, offensively speaking, and Azumarill's defensive typing is still not bad at all. Now Azumarill is not a Scald Switching, that's something to keep in mind. Latias is a pretty good Scald Switching now that Burn does not do more than leftovers can recover, but even so, I'll have to look into other means of switching into Scald with a bulky water slot later on. So Azumarill's not really fulfilling the bulky water slot per se, it's more of an offensive water, and that's how I'm treating it. It's a bulky offensive water with priority once again. So if you notice, my first 3 Pokemon, Mega Lopunny, Latias, Azumarill, all have priority options. Latias has Sucker Punch. It's not used very often, but it does exist. I'm going to count it because I can very well bring it. Don't think I won't. I've done it before. So that's definitely a theme with my team with these early picks, is I want as much priority as possible because priority bails me out of getting hexed. And I did not have that last season. I'm having it this season, and nothing's going to stop me from doing that. So Azumarill, just an overall huge threat with Belly Drum as well as Choice Band, Assault Vest. Those are the most common sets, but it can also run really cheeky stuff like Sap Sipper, Rest Talk. Rest Talk Belly Drum is something Matty Brawlick ran in the NPL war. All really cool sets that I can do with the Azumarill, and I definitely feel like I can use it pretty well this season, and we'll see how that goes. But then for round 4, I picked up the King, Nidoking, and this Pokemon is one that I've been wanting to use for a very long time, as its speed tier is decent. I believe it's base 85 or so. So not slow, not amazingly fast, but still fast enough to outpace pretty much every single wall that it needs to outpace, so that's pretty nice, considering the Sheer Force Life Orb combo deals out some pretty hefty damage. But the main reasons why I wanted Nidoking are not really for its wall breaking potential, but more so for its ability to set up Toxic Spikes, Stealth Rock, and to be an immunity to electric spams. So with the addition of so many powerful electric types in this generation, as well as so many powerful fairy types, both Nidoking and Nidoqueen were very in my opinion, should have been very sought after Pokemon for this season of the NPL. Nidoqueen actually went before I could pick it up during this round, otherwise I would have. So Nidoking was the backup, but it still fulfills the same role as Nidoqueen would, although with more offense and less defense, but that's okay, I can adapt on that. So yeah, Nidoking is a Pokemon I'm definitely excited to use. It also has Sucker Punch like Latias, so again, more priority and more ways to make sure my opponent cannot just sweep me with a setup sweeper or something when I'm not going to have the likes of a Clefable on my team this time around. So those are the first 4 Mons. The rest of my team is essentially going to be designed to support that, as those 4 Pokemon I firmly believe can carry me throughout the season offensively, if need be. That said, I can always pick up more pieces that can be used both offensively and defensively. One large, enormous, the biggest... very big defensive role that needs to be fulfilled is to deal with the likes of Tapu Lele, as Tapu Lele is, in my opinion, the strongest Pokemon I don't think it's even my opinion, I think it is the strongest Pokemon that is allowed in this season of the NPL, and I want to have an amazing switch into Tapu Lele, an amazing counter to Tapu Lele, and that is Metagross. So that is my round 5 pick. Metagross being able to be used both defensively and offensively, making it an exceptional bulky offense mon, as well as having Bullet Punch for priority, and having really a very powerful dual stab in Steel and Psychic. So it's just a very good mon for the team overall, and I think it supports the team both offensively and defensively, which is pretty crucial, I believe. As with my playstyle, I definitely like having a sturdy wall core to fall back on. Metagross doesn't have recovery outside of leftovers and rest, but that said, it usually won't even need it, and if it does need it, I can just run that item, or I could run rest, talk, etc. So I can use it defensively. Its typing is good enough to do so, and I really do think it's very, very good in this generation. I think it'll easily continue to move up the rounds as the generation goes on in terms of when it's selected in various draft leagues. So pretty excited to pick up Metagross, and on top of that, I did decide to make it Z eligible as well. So again, in the same vein as Latias, I decided to make the Z eligible, one, so that knockoffs don't do as much damage whenever I'm holding my Z item, but two, to power up some of his weaker coverage moves, as it gets things like, I'm trying to think of a couple examples, it gets elemental punches, I believe Thunder Punch and Ice Punch. It's nice to power those up for sure, as well as the likes of Aerial Ace and Pursuit if I want a powerful dark attack. So Metagross can do quite a bit with the Z eligibility, and that's why I decided to give it a Z option for my team. So for round 6, we have Whimsicott. Now Whimsicott is a pretty decent mod for my team. I like it because of its ability to give me some momentum, as I mentioned before, is pretty crucial to success, I believe, in the format, and it's something I haven't really exploited too much in previous seasons. I've tended to draft teams that really didn't have much momentum but were very, very good defensively. This season I'm kind of taking more of a middle ground approach, where I want walls that are passable to good, but I want momentum on most if not all of them. So that'll be a recurring trend you see here with these next 3 picks, where I'm picking very defensive Pokemon that can also take advantage of momentum. And like I said, I think that's really crucial to success in a more offensively oriented format that I am anticipating for this season of the NPL. So Whimsicott's good for that. It's also just good as a relatively bulky grass type. For the likes of the Zygarde forms, which are running around, I needed something to switch into Thousand Arrows, and obviously flying types aren't able to do that, so now I do have Whimsicott, which can fulfill that role if that is what I choose to do in that particular matchup. It's also another fairy type, which is nice just in general, so Dragon Spam does not get to me, and Fairy is just one of the best, if not the best typing in the game anyway, so I really can't complain about having 2 fairies on this team for sure. Plus, Leech Seed support is very nice for the rest of my wall core that we'll talk about here, I guess now. So, the next Pokemon I picked up in round 7 is Mandibuzz. So, Mandibuzz takes a lot of defog pressure off of Latias, and that's huge, 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 because now Latias is freed up to do whatever the heck it wants. And when Latias can use the full extent of his move pool, it is so hard to prep for, so hard. And I'm excited to definitely use that this season. But Mandibuzz also is more than a one-trick pony, in my opinion, in that, yeah, it's going to be bulky, it's going to be annoying, but I feel it can do a little bit more than what people give it credit for, and I think even if it is relatively predictable, which it is pretty predictable, I'm not going to deny that, it still can run enough different combinations of moves to be effective in any given matchup, and I do think it just patches a lot of holes that my team currently had at this point. So Mandibuzz made a lot of sense for me, and even though it's not great offensively, defensively it's fantastic. It also has U-turn, which is lovely, so I can maintain momentum and won't just be taken advantage of by having the Mandibuzz. It's also nice to just have a dark type to switch into Psychic Spam, as there's some pretty powerful Psychic types that I don't want to deal with, and Mandibuzz certainly helps with that. I caught myself in a situation last season a lot, actually, where people would feel like it's okay to run setup sweepers with only Psychic coverage, so I did make it a priority this season to draft a dark type to make sure they are forced to run more than just Psychic coverage to beat me, as that was kind of frustrating to say the least, as it gave me a really hard time last season. So yeah, Mandibuzz seemed like a good fit for my team, and that's why I decided to pick it up there at round 7. So, at round 8, I picked up Electros. So, This is a Pokemon that helps a lot with alleviating some of the electric weakness to my team. Granted, I have the likes of Latias and Nidoking. Those are both relatively offensive Pokemon. I know they both can be built to be bulky, but it's nice to have something like Electros to help out with that. It's also just nice to make sure that I retain momentum in a game, as I can send out a physically defensive Electros really in any situation if it has an Assault Vest, and it can pretty much freely Volt Switch, just get a nice pivot into something that's more threatened in my opponent's team. So it's just a nice addition to any team. I don't know how often I will bring it this season, but it never has a bad matchup per se, because it can always be you can always invest in it such that it can take hits from certain things and then just get momentum on them or do a lot of damage with its really impressive coverage option. So I think Electros is very, very underrated in the format. I know a lot of people do like drafting it, but even with this being an open draft, I decided to take it as high as round 8 because I felt like it just fit my team really well. It wasn't going to hurt my team at all, and despite the fact that it's really slow and doesn't have any priority options, it still can be a menace and makes team building a little bit harder for my opponents. So that was kind of the idea with that overall, but really I just want to abuse its coverage and abuse its ability to gain me some momentum, and that's why I felt it was a good pickup overall, as well as being a nice resistance to electric and just not having any weaknesses, which is usually pretty nice for sure. So then at round 9, I picked up what might seem to be maybe not the best pick in the world, and that's Doublade. Now, Doublade looks pretty redundant with Metagross, yes, sure, but if we look around the league, there's a Mega Kangaskhan, and like I was saying before, I need something for Mega Kangaskhan, and if I don't have Doublade, I lose to Mega Kangaskhan, so we picked up Doublade because I just have a hunch I'm probably going to have to play Mega Kangaskhan this season, so I picked up Doublade for that reason, and it's still good outside of that as well, as it's a very decent. It's a decent Pursuit Trapper. It's also a good Swords Dance Sweeper. It can also just be a general defensive nuisance for my opponent's teams, as things like Fighting Spam are just shut down by having a sturdy Ghost type like this. And I really don't think it is redundant with Metagross. I might not bring Doublade as much as I bring Metagross. I might not, but in certain matchups, Doublade is certainly better, and that's why I decided to go ahead and spend my round 9 pick on something like Doublade. Plus, it has access to priority, which is, again, very nice. That makes 1, 2... I'm counting Whimsicott as priority because Prankster kind of counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Pokemon that have priority options, and that is lovely, to say the least. That's really nice. That'll bail me out a lot this season, I do believe, especially given the caliber of competition now. The NPL is becoming so ridiculous in terms of the level of competition that I need to have as many ways as possible to bail me out whenever I get out predicted, whenever I get outplayed. I need to have ways to deal with that, so priority certainly is helpful there. But yeah, Doublade just seems like a really nice pickup for my team. It also helps me a little bit with fairies if Nidoking and Metagross... Well, I guess I shouldn't really say that. Metagross is also good for fairies, Nidoking as well. But it's also nice for fairies because Steel is good against fairy, of course. But yeah, that's Doublade. So then round 10 is Gastrodon. So this is my Scald switch in. As like I said before, Azumarill is not really the best bulky water because I want to use it more offensively or as a pivot. So it's not exactly going to be... I don't want to switch it into Scalds. You know, that's not the best idea to let your Azumarill get burned. So Gastrodon's helpful for that. But if you... I'm going to go ahead and bring up my round 11 as well, which is Talonflame. So when you pair Gastrodon and Talonflame together, those two provide very, very good defensive synergy in that everything Gastrodon is weak to, Grass, Talonflame is very resistant to. Everything Talonflame is weak to, Rock and Electric and Water, Gastrodon chews up like it's nothing. So those two have very good type synergy together, and that's why I decided to pick them up with my round 10 and my round 11 selections. Now Gastrodon does serve as the typical bulky water, and I think it'll help my team quite a bit because it's a very sturdy Pokemon. It can be it's really not even that threatened by its 4x weakness because it is so naturally bulky in both of its defenses with a very high HP stat. So it'll take a very powerful quad effective hidden power to take me out in one hit. So and I can always remedy that with a Rendo Berry and etc. So Gastrodon is, I think it's good in the format. It's obviously not amazing, but that's why it's a round 10 pick. I just think defensively it synergized with my team very well. I needed something like that on my team, and yeah, I just think it's an overall good mon for my draft. The only qualm I have with it is that I wish it had Stealth Rock. That'd be really nice to be able to run Stealth Rock on my ground type, but unfortunately that's not quite going to work out for me. One other thing I did not mention is that having the combination of Nidoking and Gastrodon allows me to have a little bit more fun with not really me, makes my opponents have a lot more fun with trying to decide which Hidden Power they want to run. And that's something I do like, because now they're going to be forced to run Hidden Power Ice or Hidden Power Grass on their electric types, and they can't have both unless they have Grass Knot. So I'm able to essentially split them one way or the other, meaning one of my 2 Mons should be able to wall many of the electric types in the game. So that's certainly helpful for me there as well. So just a little bit on Talonflame, since I already revealed it. I also made Talonflame Z move eligible, and that's because I can click Z Brave Bird when I'm at full health and get priority on it and not take recoil damage. And then on top of that, I can then click Brave Bird the following turn and get priority once again. So it's basically a means of checking the fact that Talonflame got nerfed a little bit this generation. I know it's not as good this generation. I don't expect it to be as good this generation, but I also think that many teams didn't prep as heavily for things like Talonflame, because I know in the past, almost every team had a good bird check. This season, that does not quite appear to be the case. I think Talonflame can actually put in a lot of work against some of these drafts, and that's part of the reason why I waited so long to pick it up. I was eyeing it for a long time, but whenever all these teams, or so many of these teams, don't have the best ways to deal with Talonflame, it just becomes that much stronger of a threat. And even though it doesn't always have priority like it did in Generation 6, it still is fast enough to outspeed almost everything. I don't know exactly what its base speed is off the top of my head, but it's faster than almost everything. So I do think Talonflame is a threat this generation still. Even if not a top tier threat, it's enough of a threat in the format to make my opponents sweat a little bit. So that's the thought on that there. So that's about all I have to say on my draft. Overall, I am pretty happy with it. I think it's substantially better. Not just substantially, so many levels better than my draft last season, as my entire draft plan was able to come to fruition. Yes, I did get sniped early by not being able to get Tapu Fini in the Azumarill slot and then having Nidoking instead of Diggersby, but even so, I do think this draft ended up being very strong anyways, and I think it'll do pretty well. It's a little bit different than what I'm used to using in the format, as you guys have seen. I tend to draft around defensive cores, not these very offensive cores like Mega Lopunny, Latias, Azumarill. So that part's a little bit different for me. It'll just take some practice to get the hang of how it's supposed to work, but I'm excited to use it. It's going to be a nice mix-up for me, and I think it'll help me enjoy what I'm doing a little bit more, to have a little bit of a different routine in my building. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about this. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you think about the draft in the comments below, and I hope you're looking forward to our Week 1 upload, which will be on December 26th, so the day after Christmas is when you can expect the Week 1 upload. I'll be against Carney Hobo and his Vancouver Stealth Rocks, which is a very threatening team as well. He has all kinds of wall breakers. That's just terrifying to deal with. But yeah, you can be looking forward to that on December 26th. But that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all on the 26th. Peace.